Today on the Awakening platform, we'll be joined by Natalie Abrahams. Natalie would share with us a little bit more about her recent transition, the importance of creating powerful and empowered teams, and some insights on why it's critical for leaders to pause before preparing themselves for what's next. Join us. Hi, and welcome again to the Awakening platform. Joining us today is none other than Natalie Abrahams. Natalie, so great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. So Natalie, as you know, this platform is really about speaking with leaders such as yourself and understanding about those special awakening moments that as leaders, sometimes the pace of things gets so busy that we often stop or forget to stop and just recall what was that moment or moments that really brought about and informed the type of leaders that we are.
Yeah.
Now, lots been happening with you lately. We've been seeing you
Putting it
quite a bit
mildly.
on social media. And what I want to do is go beyond the headline, so to speak, and just speak to you.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's jump in.
Sure.
You've been very visible, not just with your recent role, but as a leader for some time now. And as you consider that leadership role and your recent transition, share with us what you're feeling beyond that role.
That is a really large question. I'm feeling peace. I'm feeling excitement and a lot of curiosity as well. I'm also feeling some surprise, I think, around the amount of attention that it has garnered from all sorts of corners of the world. But those would be my dominant feelings. Peace, because I made a decision at a time that felt right for me.
Right.
Curiosity, because I'm super excited to pursue whatever is next. And also, I think a sense of contentment. You know, I've spoken a few times now about setting certain goals for myself as I considered my last role. And it is a good feeling to know that I accomplished what I set out to. So the timing for me could not be more perfect.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. And, you know, you said a few things there that are really critical attributes for leadership. Being curious. You know, sometimes we get to a point in our career and we're like, okay, sort of landed that corner office job, but that curiosity is so critical as human beings, but more so, I think, for leadership. So, important trait. Let's talk a little bit about and go deeper about that self-awareness and who is Natalie. And in that regard, when you strip away the titles, strip away the brand, and by brand I mean brand Natalie Abrahams, because you've definitely created one. What parts of yourself you think feel the most true right now? And in that truth, do you feel any sense of vulnerability?
So it's important for me to share here that the personal brand that is Natalie Abrahams is me. It only wears well if it is authentic to who I actually am. I don't have to try at it or put on a mask every day to show up as her, because I am that person. That very animated, sometimes loud, very passionate person, very impatient person, very driven, excitable. I want to have a conversation. I want to learn more. I ask a lot of questions. You know, taking a certain pride in how I show up in all spaces. That is exactly who I am. So even as I've made this decision and I transition, it isn't hard to still be me. Those things come quite naturally to me. And then when I reflect on how it's sitting and how it's wearing, quite well. In fact, I spent a lot of time when I was sharing my departure communications with my team and internally talking about moving on to find what else aligns with my personal brand. So it feels as though all things are in alignment and things are happening as they're supposed to.
Yeah. Wow. You spoke about, that personal side, and in listening to you, you seem very intentional about the creation of brand Natalie from a personal perspective. And that energy, which we all experience, I was teasing you as we were getting ready for the show, saying, yeah, I used to go online and go, so who's wearing what Natalie has on today, boy? I want to see who's twinning with Natalie. And it creates the personal side, the human side. And so often as leaders, we know we are, but we think we have to put on almost this facade or this bravado. And while this may not have necessarily been something we discussed prior in terms of just prepping you for our chat, how important is that? How important is the many, or are the many faces of leadership, and the intentionality to ensure that Natalie the person is never lost with Natalie the leader?
So there was a lot of talk when I took up my last role just under 5 years ago about being the first female CEO, and there were a lot of expectations around that, and a lot of mystery. I am privileged that if I'm in a public space, there are young professional women or young aspiring women who ask questions. How did you, and how can I, and what do I? So it has always been very important to me to use my platforms well, to remove some of the mystique. There's no little factory in the background making magic happen. There is only the reality of my space. And the space that I was in, I worked with fabulous men and women, and we spent so much time together in a very hyper-competitive environment, very dynamic environment, that it actually became a thing that some days we'd come to work looking alike, and it became a joke. So I said, let's take a photo of that. And God bless the team, they're always willing. And so we did that, and it became a thing more than I ever realized it would. But those moments are the real moments. Yes, we're in here, hankered down over the issue of the day, but we're actually people behind the scenes, working hard, doing things for you, our customers, and look, snap. And those moments, to me, make it a lot easier to weather crises. And so when something happens and you have to communicate, you're not a foreign voice to your customers or your staff. You're someone that they resonate with in some way. You're a human being. If you say it is so, persons are more inclined to listen to your message. And then for your team, if they understand snippets of who you are, it becomes easier, I believe, to follow a particular direction or path that you're trying to take.
Absolutely. You mentioned in your last response about the importance of being intentional. So often as leaders, being intentional sometimes feels like a lot in terms of the many roles that we play. Share with us a little bit more about the importance of being intentional in curating your personal brand, but also your leadership brand, and the possible symbiotic relationship between the two.
So I will say this, my personal brand, I did not necessarily set out all those many years ago to craft a particular image. Like I said, it feels authentic to me, and it evolved over time. I often say that, our lives are a collection of experiences. And I believe that the personal brand that I carry is a collection of my life experiences, professionally and personally. So I can't say I honed in and curated a particular personal brand. It evolved, and then I would have cultivated that and nurtured that and made sure that it felt authentic to who I really, really am. I always want it to be that when you encounter Natalie professionally or personally, you're never surprised.
Right.
It's the same person. You should feel like you know this person in whatever space we engage. But I will say, in terms of your leadership intentionality, I cannot help it. I'm a Leo, I'm type A, and so I am rather structured in my thinking.
Mhm.
Even in very frenetic or dynamic environments, I find a way to put some structure or some square brackets around it. Else you live in chaos.
Mhm.
And that's never the intention. So in terms of my leadership intentionality, I don't talk about all of the markers that I set for myself when I went into my last role, but one of them was around how I would lead in that space with the team. And I was very clear about that, how I wanted to lead, the type of experience I wanted from my team while in that space. That definitely was thought about and pondered over and sleep lost about what would it look like to be working in a team with me in that space going forward. So yes, thought went into that. And every day you're forced to check in with yourself.
Mhm.
And trust me, if you're leading, intentionally with your team, they'll tell you too how you're showing up. And those moments are really good checkpoints for, am I doing as I said I would, as I committed to myself that I would?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. You spoke about that checking with your team. Sometimes many leaders feel, whether it's intentional or not, or it's sort of a byproduct, I have to check in with my team, whether it's through a 360 or an employee engagement survey. But,
Mhm.
once I'm hitting the numbers, it's okay.
Mhm.
Earlier, you spoke about that relationship piece,
Mhm.
and you just mentioned truly considering how you curated that relationship with your team.
Mhm.
Why was it important to understand from your team and check in with them about how you were leading?
Again, if you're doing it in the ideal way, you won't have to ask, they'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
How they respond to a particular directive is going to tell you. And then if you're like me and you prefer an open door policy, they're going to walk right in and tell you. And it's okay too to create a safe space where you can disagree. I always wanted to hear the alternate view. What have I missed? Why do you feel this strongly about it? And I would say you may not win the discussion, but I want to hear about it. And yes, you may actually come out with me changing a perspective or changing a behavior, but that to me is so important. With your team, when you are calling on people and asking a lot of them, there needs to be a certain degree of openness that you allow.
Mm.
In that way, people will show up with their best selves. They will tell you when they're not at their best and they can give you no more. And then you need to change strategy, because the worst thing is to walk away from a room or a meeting or a team and go, they've got this. And they're saying something completely different. And when you look back 2 weeks later or a week later, whenever you needed to check back in, they're going, yeah, we never had that.
Yeah.
It is the worst disappointment for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather have those conversations up front. So it's about creating a space where people feel that they can respectfully share their views, share how they're feeling, give you feedback on how you are showing up.
Mm-hmm.
I've had moments where my team has said to me, you look off today. What's going on?
Yeah.
And the relationship is such that you can go, okay, here's why I'm off. These are the things that are boiling. These are the things that are not going well. How can we course correct? There is so much value in that. The mistake that I feel we often make is thinking that when you sit on the top, you must be on top of every single thing. No. If you spend enough time cultivating the right environment and having the right people on your team leading the various areas, they're on top of it. And they're going to flag you and let you know when it's not going well. And they're going to call in for reinforcement.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot lead alone.
Oh.
Absolutely cannot. So the success of the business is the success of the teams as well as yours.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I was about to say, preach, let's have some church up in here. But, it's really about those moments as a leader when leadership is still taking place, when the leader has left the room.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you've cultivated that environment.
Mhm.
So some key attributes there, yeah?
Mhm.
The importance of curiosity, the importance of being intentional,
Mhm.
the importance of creating that culture that allows for that connectivity. And I want to go and ask you about that very human culture that you created. What did that require from you personally that sometimes people don't see? It's one thing we put out there certain things that look, oh wow, that looks so cool, and I'd like my team to do that, but that's the end product.
Mhm.
What did that take from you from an investment perspective?
Now that's another meaty question, Marcia. Yes, you're right. So on social media, we don't put the tough conversations. We might make reference to a lesson learned from a tough conversation, and I do that. But what it takes from you, the leader, is an absolute investment and sacrifice of your own time.
Mm-hmm.
Your people have to believe that you're actually interested in them and that you actually wish to engage with them. Imagine me walking up to someone going, let's take a picture of us wearing the same blouse, and I haven't said good morning to them in 2 weeks. How does that work? And people can automatically read that disconnect. So those moments, those human moments that people observe on social media come because I have, again, it's based on my personality, invested time with my team. We have been in the trenches together. And that's the end product of that is what people see. It also means that you have to, as a responsible leader, internalize some of the negatives, particularly when you're part of a group of companies. There are often decisions that filter down to the local level that you have to figure out, how am I going to communicate this message and translate this in a way that will keep my team motivated and make sure we get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And often, particularly in highly pressurized moments, you have to internalize that pressure so the team can keep going. Otherwise, you're hammering at them every day. So to keep the motivation up, to keep the engagement up, to know that when you reach out and you call someone at midnight and go, we have a problem, and they'll answer,
Yes.
you actually have to internalize some of the pressure to give them the space to feel like they can answer when you really need them.
Mm.
And that's the piece that no one sees or talks about, right? You don't see that on social media. You don't see the leader up at 3 a.m., 2 a.m. fielding calls. You don't see those moments where the leader might be out doing a grocery shop and someone approach them and go, I have a problem with the brand. You know, you're taking that on because you are the face of the brand, you're the most senior representative, and that's your responsibility. But that's the piece nobody ever films or talks about. But that's what it takes. You actually give a lot of yourself. And one of the reasons why I've taken the decision that I did is because I needed a bit of time back for myself so that I can give to the next phase. If you're all in, you're all in. Again, I said I'm type A, and I tend to be all in.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to think about what's next, I needed to pull back from such a all-consuming space to really give myself a minute to go, and what else?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. I would say the courage, as I listen to you, to be at that point and say, okay, I'm going to step back because of the investment that I've given, that I've seen the return. But I need to now step back so I can make space for me. Let's talk a bit more about that transition, Natalie. When you think about that next step, so to speak, and the ability to be in a space of, I want to say, real awareness of where you are, of the benefit that you have given, not just the brand that you would have represented, but the intentionality of the relationships that you've curated, meaningful relationships with your team members, where you can discuss the tough things and the exciting, fun things. When we think about that transition and where you're going to next, because I know that's on the minds of so many people, where are you in that thought process of the what's next for Natalie?
I'll be honest, not very far, only because I have been a lot busier than I expected I would be coming right off the heels of moving on. And have not created a lot of space just yet. I've been fortunate. I've done a bit of travel. I've got some more coming up. Looking forward to that, and some breathers. But in between, it's interesting how still your perspective, your opinion is still sought. I feel very blessed around that. And it's interesting how many people want to have conversations with you about what's next. I love those as well, obviously. But the one thing I'm really, really clear on, if it is, I never want to be disingenuous. And so if I'm on a number of platforms talking about authenticity and my personal values and what resonates with me, the space I'm in needs to reflect that as well. And so as I mentioned to my teams as I was moving on, making sure that whatever comes next aligns with the personal brand. So it's still exciting. I feel as though I'm able to make a real impact, leave a legacy, work really hard. Because don't be fooled by the light social media moments. I thrive on a challenge and giving of my all and working really hard. I love when that hard work produces a result. To me, that's the gold dust, right? That's what the next space is going to be about. And some might say, well, that's what you had. Why would you move? Because now that space, I've done what I wanted to do there, new space. I've worked across a number of sectors in my career. And I look back at that sometimes and go, wow, when in moments of reflection. So who's to know what I could do in yet another space? But again, when you don't give yourself time to breathe and reflect and you're always fighting fires, you don't have a moment for that introspection and that conversation. And we live in small communities if we want to be real about it. And one of the number one pieces of feedback I've had is, but you're so tied up with that brand. How could I can't think? And that's the problem. That to me is the problem.
Yes.
I am so much more than that brand.
Yes.
And so let's start thinking about me in another space.
Yes. And I just want to acknowledge you for the not just self-awareness, but the courage, again, to overtly articulate that. Because as leaders, we are so much more than the entities, organizations that we represent, that we, with commitment and authenticity, represent. Don't get it twisted. But we are more. There's so many layers. And as you reflect on those layers and that held space where you're like, I know that I am going to be me, I'm going to be authentic. Is there anything from a professional or personal perspective that you have to sort of let go of so that you could move forward?
Yes. So I read something very recently that really resonated with me. If you aren't careful and you continue to deliver in your current space, you're continuously going to stay focused on giving your organization what it needs. But what a thing when you stop and go, okay, but what do I need? What am I getting out of the space? I've seen people grow and develop. I've seen the business grow and develop. What do I need now? And am I getting that from this current space? So often we don't allow ourselves to stop and think about that. So it's very easy to hold on to your status quo and keep giving the organization what it needs, and you feeling a misalignment there. So professionally, this moment represents that for me. And then personally, I can't say there is a lot of letting go personally. Because again, if you're type A like I am, you sort of plan around transitions. So I don't expect much to change there. I think the biggest thing is possibly not having to formally engage with a team and direct them and plan for the day and what we're doing this month. And that piece is missing now. But it's still informally there because, as I said, people still reach out to you for your perspective on certain scenarios. And I still mentor. And so those persons still call on me and so on. I can't say that, the team's calls have ended because now it's like Pavlov's syndrome. Pavlovian syndrome, that ringtone.
Yes.
I still hear it actually and in my head. So that hasn't changed. But I would say it's just focusing on what do I want out of my next phase.
Yeah, for sure. As I listen to you, you said something that I think people would be very tentative to say overtly for fear of being called, need I say, selfish. Do leaders need to be selfish at times?
Sometimes, but also I really want to disassociate it from a notion of selfishness. You can have both. You can absolutely deliver in your space and feel fulfilled every day. I think the checkpoint for us as leaders that we often ignore is when those two fall out of alignment. That's the piece. Because it's easy. The status quo is easy. I am known as X. I do Y. This is expected. And It's when we pause and go, wait, actually. So sometimes we just keep busying ourselves to make sure we don't have that conversation with ourselves. The magic is when we stop and go, actually, you know what? No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It takes a lot to say no.
Yes.
Yeah.
It does. And everyone doesn't understand it. And that's also okay.
That is okay.
That is also okay.
Yeah.
I think I've been surprised. And I feel like there's not a lot that can shock me anymore in life. But I have been surprised at the amount of license people will give their mouths and their fingers without reference to fact or real information. That has been surprising and a little disappointing. But again, you have to find, if you're at peace, as I said I was earlier, you move past those things. You have a moment of, and you move past those things because, again, you understand within you why you made the decision that you did. I managed my transition carefully to minimize disruption to the business, to minimize disruption to our customers and our team. But my priority was making sure that the people closest to me in the organization and externally knew about that decision. And so you're at a certain piece because you've done the right communications and you're ready for your next step.
Yeah. For sure. Another big challenge I think some leaders have is they're always under observation, and you sort of alluded to that. So for the conversations of, oh, so why is she leaving now? Or how come? And I don't really want to harp so much on the departure. I think you've been very clear.
I hope so.
Very clear. I want to focus now on that next step, as we said, beyond the headline, so to speak. And I want to bring it to beyond Barbados. Because in our region, leadership is closely tied to the visibility of that leader to the organization. And how have you navigated that? Some of it you sort of mentioned, but I want us to go a bit deeper. That is that public space and that personal space. You said you were intentional about that transition, but even beyond that, as Natalie Abrahams, how do you navigate that?
Carefully, because what I don't want is either space to impact the other negatively, and also with consistency. Because again, as I said, as I show up in my professional space, I want it to feel familiar in my personal space and vice versa. So any engagement with me in any space feels consistent. So I'm very careful about that. You know, in my professional space, people know that I'm easily distracted by live music and concert, right? There's often music playing in my office or something of the sort, but personally, that's who I am too. So no surprise there. And then when we speak about wider spaces, you know, again, professional experience has been in organizations that have regional reach. And so your brand isn't limited only to the local space that you live in. It does have reach outside of Barbados. And those moments have led to additional opportunities, speaking engagements, panel opportunities, and so on. And again, I believe a lot of that is because people resonate with who you show up as and how you show up. So very carefully, I'm conscious of making sure that the two spaces feel consistent and that nothing I do in one is going to negatively impact the other.
Yeah. It's not really a dichotomy, is it, between the public leader and the personal? They really should sort of coexist.
Yeah.
But that does require a fair amount of balance for it to be a healthy symbiotic relationship. What are your thoughts on that?
I would hate to think that there's a notion that as a leader, you can only have one side to yourself, which is your professional persona, your title, and so on, because all human beings need balance and they need diversity. Certainly I do. And to the point about balance, it's never always 50-50. I show up here half the time and here, the other half, or I give this space half of my effort and this space half. With time and knowing yourself and knowing your spaces, you have to be able to toggle based on the moment, the scenario, the day, what's happening. Some days your professional space is going to be 120% of 200% of you. But there are other moments where, again, when you can rely on a good team, good systems, good planning, good organization, good structure, that you can pull back from that piece a little bit and give the personal a little more. But it's an ongoing toggle. It's an ongoing balance. And as leaders, I believe we have to strive for the flexibility, or certainly create the flexibility, because you've put in the time, you've earned it, to be able to make those decisions on a day-to-day basis.
Yes. Yeah.
So, hold this for me 1 second. I need to look over here, but I'm coming back, and go back and forth accordingly.
Yeah, it is. So I'm hearing it is definitely situational, but I'm also hearing, to the point you made earlier, it is why you need to ensure you can rely on that team that you have mentioned you've intentionally spent time to curate in the spaces that you've led. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions we like to ensure we ask all of our guests is, was there that moment in your career, and probably was pre your formal career, that you sat back and said, okay, I believe that my role is that of a leader? Was there a moment where it struck you?
I can't say there was a moment, but I will say that there are certain traits inherent in all of us. I probably have never shared this, and I'm not necessarily certain that I should know, but here we go.
Safe space, safe space.
Oh boy.
Just you and all the viewers.
Yes. When I was a child, I used to love playing board games with my mom. And if you know me at all, you know I'm very competitive. That is not a new thing. But I had a very bad trait. If we were playing a game and I wasn't winning, I would upturn the entire board. Nobody could play if I wasn't winning. Horrible. I subsequently learned from my mom that she had a brother who used to do similar. Not blaming it on Unc, but just saying.
Might be genetics, genetics.
But a terrible trait. And happily, I grew out of it. Not only through discipline, but also maturity. Thank goodness. But I do think some of those traits are part of who we are. I like to win.
Yeah.
I like to win. I like to be in charge. And in every one of those leadership trainings and professional trainings that you do, and you're organized into groups to see who's going to emerge and who's going to take charge, I was always that person going, here's what we should do. I have an idea, But having said that, yes, that has definitely borne itself out in my career. I have been presented with opportunities. I've jumped forward to accept them, often with the support of my personal counsel, and I talk about them all the time. And those opportunities, I believe, have presented themselves because I demonstrate those traits of leadership. I am a go-getter and I want to get things done, and I'm, quite out there. I articulate very clearly what I believe the answer is. But with leadership too, and I talked about collecting life experiences, one of the best lessons you can learn is when you actually need to step back and let others drive. So when you need to listen to the room, incorporate other person's views to actually create the best possible strategy and direction. That's one of the biggest lessons.
So Natalie, you and I have known each other for some time now. And I have to say that when you announced that you were exiting, I had mutual colleagues of ours reach out going, is Natalie okay? And I'm like, she is fine, but I'll let her know that you were thinking about her. And I think that's coming from a place of people being on the outside going, why should she? Well,
who does this?
What's going on? Who does this? And I also had, and also just from personally, I think this is a great nugget to share. There may be a number of people when they listen and hear what you shared here with us, but also what you've shared elsewhere, who would love to make that type of leap forward. Can you just share any sort of wisdom or nugget as to what that requires?
So I want to be clear that this was not my intention. I took a decision for me. That was the best decision for me at a point in time. That was the intentional part, a personal decision about my professional space. But I did not intend for the amount of curiosity and outreach and so on. And I think it comes about because it's disruptive. It's a change from what people know and expect, which, okay. But that wasn't the impetus. This is definitely just me deciding I want to do something else. And I want to create the space to think about what that is and make sure that I open myself up to those opportunities. Everything that I've described about who I am spoke about all encompassing, driving hard. And once you are that person, it doesn't leave a lot of time back for you to go, okay, how do I re-energize and refresh to go again? So when I talked earlier about being excited and being curious, that's where I am now. I am excited again to do something new again, and make an impact somewhere else. And I also don't want to glamorize it to go, oh, well, you can just up and move on from your work and hope for the best. That is not a strategy either. And I talked about being type A and a planner. So you have to have your ducks in a row. You have to have a plan around how you'll navigate the space, and how you will spend your time so that you can move on clear conscience to the next thing. Now, I have a bunch of things I want to do so that I can really refocus on the next thing. A lot of personal projects, a little reno here and there. Those who are close to me will laugh when they hear about this ongoing reno that I'm going through. I want to finish that. But, clear some space and some cobwebs out, refresh, energize, to hit the ground again. That's really what it's about. And I'm flattered. And also a little surprised about how much excitement and how much interest there has been in it. It's not magic. It's a decision that I took. It's a plan that I'm rolling out. And stay tuned to this space.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Natalie, thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to commend you again for just having the awareness to step out. On this platform, we want to talk to leaders who are not just leading in their space, but leading consciously, who are awakened to being the best version of themselves. And knowing you, but also listening keenly to you. I think you're well on your way on learning more about who that person is becoming. And looking forward to watching the space.
Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Natalie.
I just did that thing that I used to love to do with my mum. So you'd be watching a film and there'd be an edit and the cup would be like this way, right? And you'd be like, oh, yeah. But I crossed the other leg. So if I were watching us, I'd be going, oh, they did a cut because I could see she's changed her. So we go back. Then you go back.
Cuts are allowed. That's so mad.
Insane.